So I'm very proud to have Aleishia come up and share a lot of the work that they've been doing to build identity and belonging as a part of BAMEed East.
So my name is Aleishia Lewis. I'm here representing BAMEed East, and unlike many of our other colleagues today, I only had an hour journey from the new city of Southend to get here, which was very good, and it is an absolute privilege to be here this afternoon. I am really grateful because actually I'm really privileged because I am not just part of BAMEed and running BAMEed East, but I am a serving deputy head teacher. So I do that 3 days a week, and then the other 2 days I work for the Church of England Foundation for Educational Leadership, where I write MPQ programmes. So I get to do two things that I love. I get to work with children and be with children and all of that great stuff, as well as also get to shape leadership. And actually it's all about seeing people that look like me leading our schools. Because I have found myself too often as the only person in the room that isn't white. And actually, what are we doing about that? And as Alana said, it's all about when children are really young, they start to recognise all of these things. And actually, what are we doing at all levels to develop identity and belonging? So that is what I'm going to speak to you about today. There are two things I feel really passionately about, and they are two things that at BAMEed East we have done a lot of work on, and we're going to share some of that with you. So through my two roles and all the other roles that I lead, they are lots of different roles, but all my ducks do line up. And actually what's really important, with all the schools that I get to work with nationally that say, can you come and help us with the curriculum? Can you come and help us with this? Can you help us with this? My first thing is actually, before we start with the curriculum or anything else, you need to start with yourself. Actually have that understanding of your own identity. And for, like Alana said, lots of people don't think about that, they don't recognise that, they don't actually have that time to stop and reflect on their own identity. So how can we do that work with children if we're not willing to do that work with ourselves? It is really important for us that actually, if we come to work with the children, we come from a point of credibility and that we come from a place of understanding. And that's what we need to start working on with all of our staff. And like Chantel said, it's not just with teachers and leaders. It is every single person in a school system that works with children. And that is at all levels. And not just within the school, but also people like educational psychologists. What's their understanding? Behavioural specialists. This work needs to be done with everybody if it's going to be done well. So we need to think about the how as well as the what. Because all too quickly schools go, okay, we'll put some posters up, we'll buy some new books, but actually it's more than that. This is deeper level work. So actually, what principles, norms, values, worldviews inform your selection of knowledge in the curriculum? This is not just about it being a bolt-on, it's about looking really deeply at what you are doing. Now, Ofsted have that new 3 eyes thing that they're loving. And the first one is all about that intent. Actually, who is this for? And it's about us as school leaders actually recognising that our children are global citizens. They may live in a leafy village in Essex. I have lots of leafy villages in Essex. But actually, they might not always be there. And actually, someone else might move into that village. How are those children and those families going to respond to that? How is that person going to feel when they move into that space? Will they have a sense of belonging? And that's what we need to think about. For who do we design our curriculum? Who are we making these choices for? If we're going to be really honest, in the last 2 years, our children have seen more change than I have seen in my 37 years of being alive. So actually, what are we doing to recognise that? Because our children are thinkers, our children are curious, our children also have an access to a plethora of information via TikTok, via Snapchat, via Google. How are we embedding what they're finding? How are we working towards them finding out the truth? That's what we have to think about. How does our curriculum level the playing field? Obviously, we're hearing a lot from the government about levelling up. How are we levelling up within our own schools? For schools that come to me and say, oh, you know, I don't know if this is for us. We've got only white children here. You need to do more work and work hard. because actually you don't have the natural diversity within you. So you have to take this journey, even more so than my school, which has natural diversity within it, and we really value that. But actually, how are you giving your white pupils the intellectual and the cultural resources to live in our multicultural society? And that is something that needs to be looked at. And also, what is the understanding of those teachers in anti-racism? How are the messages they conveying? What are the children getting from them? How do we build our learning communities in and beyond our own classrooms? Because our children learn from each other. All it takes is one child to say one thing, and suddenly that's the whole discussion. How are we able to navigate that? How are we also enabling them to question their knowledge sources? We take things too easily. We are full about the single story in our national curriculum, but actually there is a wider story. And how are we bringing that to the children so that they sense an identity and belonging, that they are part of it too? Now, thinking as well about assessment, one of my other many roles is I'm the local authority moderation manager for Southend, and it's thinking about actually how do our assessment practices, how are they suitable for all of our pupils? How are our children being marginalised within our assessment system? That needs to be looked at as well. So things that we can do on a practical basis within schools to start that realm of identity and belonging. And this is a really simple start, but it is a very powerful one. And it is simply, like we have today, what are you reading to your children? What are you showing your children every day? Because I will be really honest, as a child growing up in primary school, you know, my teachers stayed in the lane of Enid Blyton and Anne Fine and Roald Dahl. Can anyone name any black people in any of those stories? No. Fanny and Jim had some lovely lemonade, but they did not have anyone of an ethnic minority background within their stories. How are you seeing these? How are our children seeing themselves represented? I teach my children at school, they get a very good history in my assemblies, because in Black History Month, I taught them all about Cleopatra. Yes, Cleopatra coming at you. That's exactly who I taught them about. Because in the 90s, growing up, they were the first people I saw that looked like me, who had their hair plaited like me. Cleopatra and Eternal, yes. Everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, Eternal, weren't they great? Where have they gone? But this is it. Actually, for me, I could identify with those people. Because not only were they not white, they were also British. Because otherwise, in our curriculum, anyone black is from America. And anyone black is generally involved in some sort of racial struggle. Because actually, we learn a lot about Martin Luther King. I love Martin Luther King. When I was 14, I was pretty much obsessed with Martin Luther King. I watched a lot of stuff and read a lot of stuff. But actually, where do we learn in our curriculum about the things that people do that aren't associated with oppression and that aren't associated with a struggle? So actually, for our children, how are they sitting there thinking, anything, right, I'm a black child, everything's going to be hard? Where are we showing them that actually they have power and influence and significance? That is really key. So starting with what we have for our children to read, but also you as adults need to read it too. So Black and British, every member of staff, I bought that for them all of them. And I made them all read it. It's the children's version, so they had no excuse, because you can read that in 2 hours. And you know what? They were like, there were black people in Roman times? Hell yeah, there were. So when you're teaching Romans in year 4, I want to see those black people from the Roman times in it. Because actually, we did not just arrive on the Windrush. We were here a long time before that. And that's what needs to be seen. Our children need to realise they have a belonging that is here. That is really key. Who are our children learning about? So year 2, a person of significance that is named in the Key Stage 1 national curriculum is Neil Armstrong. But actually, I didn't learn about Neil Armstrong at primary school, but I know exactly who Neil Armstrong is, because you see him on the television, you hear about him in a pub quiz, you find about him in a book. Mae Jemison, absolutely brilliant story. How amazing would it be if our children not just see a woman going into space, but oh my gosh, she's a woman and she's black. Yeah, she is. That's what we need to see. That's so our children know they can be whatever they want to be, no matter the colour of their skin. And that is what we have to focus on. Stephen Lawrence Day, we mark that as a school, when we mark that as a school from reception up. Because actually the truth should not be hidden from any of our children. Our children in reception at ages 4 and 5 could all appreciate at their age appropriate level that actually things need to change. And that is really key. But also, how are we showing the reality of everyday stories? So as a child, think about it now. When you were younger and you had your annual Remembrance Day assembly, did you ever see any pictures like this come up? Probably not. Because when I started at my school, where I've been for 6 years now, I sat in the Remembrance Day assembly and my head teacher was like, how was it? Was it good? Was it all right? And I was like, well, yeah, it was all right. I said, but what about all the other people? He was like, what? I said, well, I'm sorry, Remembrance Day isn't just a white festival, because actually there are all of these people who are equally important. And how are we celebrating and valuing that? Now, my mother is here. She's over there in the corner. And I remember a few years ago, she phoned me up and she was like, oh my gosh, there's a programme on tonight about the black soldiers in the war. It's on at 3 a.m. on BBC 4. I was like, you can watch that. I'll catch it up on record. But then, 2 years ago, we got upgraded to 11 o'clock on BBC 2. See, we're making waves now. But actually, there are things out there that we can use to educate ourselves. And what are we doing? As Alana said at the beginning, it's about personal action. So what personal action can every single person in here take so that they actually develop their sense of identity and belonging, but also help to build that for other people and help to build that for our children? So some of the work that we have done in our school, and I'm really proud of the work that we do in our school, because actually we really value everybody's difference. We spend a lot of time in primary school talking about how everyone is the same, but we're not. And we need to talk about that difference in a positive spin. So Happy in Our Skin is a book that our Year 2 children used. And actually the children explored the language of colour, because colour is not just black, white, brown. There are all the other shades in between that all have their own words. And how brilliant is this, that this child has put, I have a mix of caramel and cream coloured skin. How wonderful is that, that she can celebrate her skin. That is what we want, children to celebrate who they are. This year's Black History Month, the focus was on proud to be. And our children, every single one of them, we had a whole display of what they are proud to be. So how I am proud to be half black, half brown, and I am proud to be different. That's what we want for our children, for them to openly celebrate their identity. I am proud to be a Muslim. I am proud to be who I am. I am proud to be Nigerian and know 7 languages. And that child actually does speak 7 languages. But how amazing that they can identify at that young age. And that we keep having that conversation. Because we as adults, from thinking about what you may have said when you were 2 to now, your identity may have changed and what you recognise in yourself. And that's really important to see. This is something I absolutely love, because our Year 2s all made their skin colour and they made a whole canvas of it, which we have up. One of our children, about 2 years ago, called Elizabeth, she actually said, I don't like the colour of my skin. And we said to her, why? She said, because I'm black and that means I'm not beautiful. Elizabeth is in here, and I tell you what, she is the most confident little girl. But for someone so confident to actually think at the age of 5 that she isn't beautiful because of the colour of her skin, we need to do more work like this so that she can see and others can see how valuable and wonderful they are. So some of the work that we have done in BAMEed East, a big focus for us is actually working with pupils, because actually that's the change we need to see. We need to work with our pupils. So here's an example of some of the work that Lorraine, who's another one of our leaders, has been doing, and actually she's been doing some again this afternoon. So working with one of the colleges, they've got a collective council as a secondary school, and they have been working on developing identity and diversity within their school, and actually taking a lead on how the school approaches things. How brilliant is that? Actually going to the children. Because whilst we do a lot of work with training teachers and working with schools, we all need to do more work with the pupils themselves. And last week, Friday, I was absolutely astounded. I organised a pupil summit, and I had 7 schools from across Southend all come together, and the children spent the day talking about identity, talking about leadership. They made music together. We had the support of Youth Music UK, which was fantastic, and they all made friends. And I tell you what, that group of children, all their ideas, if the world is with these kids, we're actually going to make a big difference, because a lot of adults could learn a lot from that group of 42 children I had last Friday, because those children value difference. Those children recognise what needs to be done to make this world a better place, and they do have a real deep sense of equity. And it's been a real privilege to see the journey that those 8 schools I've been working with over the year have got to. Because it's one thing, anyone can say what they've been doing, but when it comes out of the mouth of those children, you know that actually the work is being done. And that is what's really key. I have this up on my wall. It is something that I look at all the time, because actually if we want to get that level of belonging, we really need to understand it goes beyond the surface. So diversity is important. We need to value it, we need to celebrate it. But in reality, it's just having a seat at the table. We need more than that. So inclusion is having that voice. But we need to get to a state of actual belonging, of each of our children recognising their brilliance, their value, their significance. And belonging is actually when that voice is heard. And we need to make sure that the voices go beyond the single story that is often developed in our curriculum. So I think it is now time. I have come to the end within my allocated slot. He's very...